So welcome everyone to today's webinar. Excited to have you here. I'm Chad Fife, VP of Marketing of Talview, and we are going to talk today about the future of remote recruitment and interviewing with our partner Microsoft and their wonderful Microsoft Teams software. And we're going to talk about how they integrate with Talview and how we can make your life better as a recruiting team, because collaboration is the name of the game. Today, as presenters, we have Sanjo Jose, CEO and co-founder of Talview, and also Mike Cohen, and his company is Wayne Technologies. And I hear he's still okay to use that name. No one from the Batman series has come after him yet.
Not yet. Knock on wood. We'll see how long that lasts. Yeah. How's everybody doing? Chad, Sanjo, how are you guys?
I am doing well. It looks like someone just said not yet in the chat. Let's see if we have all technical.
That's right. I still can hold on to it. Don't worry.
Not yet.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, this is funny. So when I started my company, I talked to my lawyer about it and went with a C corp for some tax and liability reasons. And she's like, well, you have a huge name convention that you can pick from because there's not as many C corps LLCs. And so I thought about it and I'm like, I think I want to do Wayne Technologies. She's like, if you do that, like you can get sued. Like you'd have to right now start another company at the same time to protect yourself. Like it's going to be twice the cost. Do you really want to do that? And I went, yep. Yeah, I really want to do that. So there's also another company that exists just in case DC ever gets all in a bunch about it. So
nice.
Yeah, let's hope I don't have to use it.
So besides having a wonderful presenter, I just want to mention Talview is the creator of the Insta Hiring Experience platform, as well as Insta Campus for students. So we do a lot. Today we'll be talking in the hiring space and the exam proctoring space. But today it's all about our focus on Microsoft Teams and Talview and how to recruit and be a hiring panel using our two systems, but in a very easy integrated fashion. And we're going to get things kicked off with Sanjo, I believe. Feel free to ask any questions via the chat, and Sanjo and Mike will be answering in real time as they see him in chat. So have a good presentation, guys.
Thanks, Chad. Wonderful. Great. Mike, let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it. So guys, I'm going to reiterate what Chad just shared with you guys. This is a training. This isn't like a webinar. So we're doing this to share kind of some best practices that we've learned. So if you have questions, ask them. We're not here to talk at you for an hour, which if you've seen me speak, I can do that. So like for the love of Pete, please interrupt me. So guys, I want to talk a little bit about the future of remote recruitment and interviewing, right? Because the bottom line is, while the global pandemic may end, most companies are going to stick with some form of remote work, remote interviewing, et cetera. And as we all know, Microsoft dominates the business application world, right? Microsoft Office is still, funny fact I learned yesterday, Microsoft Office is the #1 used recruitment tool on the planet. So keep that in mind. So Microsoft Teams, we already said Sanjo, myself. Sanjo, do you want to give a brief intro, who you are, give us something fun, tell us something you love?
Yeah, well, why not? So I am based in California, in the Bay Area. I live here with my wife and 2 kids. We in fact moved to the US very recently, only a few months ago. So very new here, but having fun here. Just had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and looking forward to this chat today.
Awesome, man. Awesome. My name is Mike. People call me Batman. I'm pretty cool with it. What do I love? I love teaching indoor cycling, which is a thing that I do. I love my 2 dogs. And I genuinely love giving back to the community. That sounds hokey, but if you know me, you know I love donating my time to help folks. In the chat, guys, over just the next 30 seconds or so, please share who you are, where you're from, and share just one thing you love. right? I don't care what you do for work or where you work, honestly. I want to know, what do you love? Share with us. Love to chat. Love to get to know y'all better. So agenda for today, guys. We want to talk about just generally working and hiring remote, some of the things that have kind of changed as a result of this dumpster fire of a year. We want to talk about interviewing, right? We want to talk about interviewing the old way that existed. And this is going to be very common, familiar for most people here. We want to talk about the old way, but maybe with some processes in place. So if you are stuck in the 20th century, that's cool. We'll give you a tool that maybe can help you, an artifact. And then we want to talk about interviewing 2.0. This is really where everyone is going. And this is not like AI, everybody's going to AI. Yeah, eventually that'll also be true. This is in the very near future. This is how interviewing is going to be done by any company who wants to stay even remotely competitive in the market. So without further review or delay, let's go over what's changed during COVID. Right. So I think one of the big things is people's emotions and kind of how they deal with it. And while this may not sound relevant, I want you to really think of how this plays into interviewing. Right. So people are genuinely a little bit more afraid, a little bit more weary, maybe, right, with everything going on. People are generally a little more anxious. I don't know that I've ever lived in a year where there was less certainty for the future. And people are genuinely feeling lonely. So think about those emotions that people are dealing with more scrutiny and or under a more focused lens this year. And think about the impact of sitting at home and interviewing with someone on a camera and what that feels like, right? That fear factor of what's happening behind me. Is someone going to make a noise? That anxiety of, am I going to have internet connection issues? What's going to happen, right? And then that lonely feeling of like, you're staring at a little circle on top of your computer and trying to figure out where to stare, the circle or the person, right? We have the idea of working remote, just this brand new concept for a bunch of people. If you've been doing this for a while, rock on. I'm with you. But if you haven't, this is probably a little uncomfortable, right? Or at least a little bit of an adjustment. The sense of team, this is really funny. Sorry, I think this is really funny. So the idea of team is a little bit different, right? So where's that line between meeting too much, meeting not enough? How do you collaborate on things without just sitting on Zoom all day? Which, by the way, I tried back in April and it is miserable. Don't do that. And then culture. How do you maintain a sense of culture? How do you define culture? How do you actually live out your culture, right? I doubt that like Google and Facebook are sending kombucha on tap and ping pong tables to all of their employees. If I'm wrong, please correct me and send me a job application because I would love that. Right. And then here's the big one, technology. Legitimate question for everybody on here. And I'm curious, I haven't asked this ever. Is anyone using the exact same technology that they were using a year ago? Like not one single difference in 2020 between the tech that they're now using on a regular basis. Yeah, right. Not even close, right? It's a great answer. There's at least one major difference in how people are functioning right now, right? So one of the things we wanted to talk about is Zoom fatigue, and this is really relevant for interviewing, right? So fun fact, video calls are actually more draining than in person. If you don't believe that, there's a scientific journal article I can share with you. It's actually more exhausting than meeting in person. You need to focus more on conversations. I don't know about you. I'm a millennial and I have ADHD. So like I have a few monitors. So if you see me looking around, I'm looking at multiple monitors. It's super hard to stay focused on just one thing. It's easier to lose focus because you're in a comfortable environment, right? So it's easier. It's very easy to slide back and grab a Coke Zero or whatever you're going to do. Face staring is a really big one. So when you're interviewing, how do you know where to look, right? Do I make eye contact? So if I'm making eye contact, I'm staring at my webcam, in which case I'm not looking at you. And that's pretty weird, right? Or do I look at you, in which case it doesn't look like I'm making eye contact? And then the anxiety that I mentioned earlier about distractions, right? A couple things to think about along these lines as well is if I randomly just did this, how many people, even just for a split second, were like, oh, did you cut out? What's going on? Do I have internet issues? Right? Whereas silence is a really common thing in like the rhythm of conversation. And here's a journal article that kind of speaks to that if you want to check it out. So why is this relevant in any way whatsoever? Because working and hiring remote is now being done through video interview. There is no other way to do it remote except on the phone, but you have to see people. Ultimately, you have to see people. So when you're looking at things like conferencing software, right? The async versus real time, video versus audio, when do you use a phone versus video? And the notorious now panel interviews. How can you reduce that Zoom fatigue, right? And the short answer is automation, technology, and collaboration. And all of those have to be present. Otherwise, we're going to weigh on all those emotions. We're going to lose a bit of our culture while we're sitting here bored out of our minds on Zoom, watching like the third season of Supernatural over here, hypothetically, and going through this just draining process, right? That idea of team is lost and the use of technology becomes daunting instead of helpful. So that's what we're going to talk about is kind of that evolution and what does that technology, what does that stack look like moving forward? And yes, we're going to be showing you on Talview because based on what I've seen so far, it is the most all-encompassing piece of technology that can do this. And their current integration with Microsoft Teams is actually pretty badass. I don't know if I can say that on this, but it's too late now. It's already out there in the ether. So guys, interviewing 1.0, this is like 20th century interviewing. We all know how to do this, right? But here's some of the struggles that we face, right? What data do we try and capture on a screening call? I'm going to say what I generally try to get. And if I'm not thinking of something, please put it in the chat. So I'd love to talk about it. But we want the compensation. What have they been doing? What do they want to do? Why are they leaving? What's their visa status? Any other interviewing activity? Where do they live? When can they start? When can they interview? Right? Those are the big pieces. And so that's at a minimum 9 pieces of data, just core pieces of data. How are we capturing it on a call? Right? I assume most of us are taking notes while we're on the call. So how does that work functionally? I know if you're senior enough, you've got enough practice, you can probably like write and type while you're having a relatively functional conversation. But the truth of the matter is if you're typing it out, what are you doing? Are you muting your phone or your computer every time you're typing a note so that they don't hear you doing literally, ready, this in the background? That's pretty distracting, right? Or are you taking notes with it by hand and then also translating that digitally later? And then when you do that, what are you doing with your notes? Are you copying and pasting them and putting them all into your ATS? Are you taking your handwritten notes and then writing them down digitally and putting them into your ATS? Are you sharing them with any other people? It becomes really daunting. And then how are you presenting it? Because most recruiters, and please correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Don't be afraid to call me out on this stuff. I love it. Most recruiters are having to physically write, 2-3 paragraphs about, Nathan Wilson is a really great recruiter. He's got excellent communication skills. The reason he's looking for a new job is this. We spoke about this, blah, 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 blah. And I can promise you, hiring managers do not want to hear that crap. They just don't. It's exhausting reading stuff like that. So we created version 1.1, we'll call it. These are for folks who aren't using maybe the most current technologies that are out there. However, they want to make sure they're capturing all of the data and they want to make sure that they're presenting it in a great way. So this is, we'll call it 1.1, right? And we can share a document. If you guys look on the top left of the screen, it says Wayne Tech /core values. If you go there, we've actually created this artifact for you. So you can take it and it tells you what information goes where and how to ask. But the idea behind it is we wanted to give folks at least something to walk away with where when you get on a call, you can write these down, right? Or ideally type them out. And as they're answering the questions, you just fill in next to where it goes, right? So you don't have all these notes all over the place. You have a general idea of what you need to get before you go. Here's the big catch, right? Here's where this comes in to really help people. This is how you should just submit the candidates. Don't give a fluffy write-up. People don't give a crap about that. Don't do it. Instead, just send your core values over to your hiring manager, right? That way, it's always in the same order. Whatever piece of data they want, they can just go to, find it, and pick it out, right? Every bit of info specific to whatever they want is in the same place every single time. There's no fluff behind it. This is as close as you can come without technology to removing the bias of your interview. There's no, I really like them, they're really great, excellent communications, etc. Right? The problem is there are still issues with how do you maintain a great conversation while you're focused on getting this data? How do you maintain the integrity of your data? So if any of you guys are recruiting for software engineers, tech roles, anybody in here? I thought I saw a few folks I know who are in that space. Dan Lockhart, right? I know that you are. Lindsay, are you still in here? DiCello, yup. There's a lot of times where I'm talking to folks and they're explaining things to me and I have no idea what they're talking about, right? I'm sure it doesn't happen to you guys, but for me, that happens, in which case, what are you writing down? Right? How do you even know what to present to a hiring manager? And it's things like these that are making interviews both less efficient and of a less high quality. So how do we deal with this? What do we do? Bum, 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 interviewing version 2.0, right? The purpose of 2.0, we're going to go through this. I'm going to let Sanjo take control because he's the master technician here, right? I'm just a guy with a loud voice and a funny nickname. So Sanjo, you can run with this. But as we go through, guys, this is what 2.0 looks like, right? So you can all read what's on the screen. Sanjo, do you want to share your screen and rock us through this? Yes, it'll be awesome. Hey guys, quick Zoom trick for everybody, because I think Sanjo has a gigantic monitor, if I had to guess. If you go up top where it says you're viewing Sanjo Jose's screen and it says view options, if you go to zoom ratio and go to fit to window, it'll fit the whole thing in your actual window. So the first piece on this is the automation piece, right? And so for the automation, there's a ton of different ways that we can automate, you know, whether it's data workflow, et cetera. But like, let's just look at the really straightforward one. Sanjo, do you want to jump in and talk for a minute about how you guys are using automation and kind of how you see this moving forward?
Sanjo, you're on mute.
Oh, if I had a nickel for every time someone said that in 2020, I'd buy
a nickel.
Island.
Why not $20? Let's get
dude a nickel. I could buy an island. You could buy an island.
Oh, thanks, Mike. No, so I think being part of multiple conversations in the recent past, talking about remote work and remote hiring, and I think Mike, what you have shared so far is very refreshing in terms of the content. I think it really talks about very practical tips which recruiters can employ. And here at Talview, our focus from day one has been how do we make the experience of our users, primarily recruiters, and that's our primary user group. How do we make that experience as seamless, as efficient as possible? And when COVID happened and all of us started working remotely, we saw that the primary form of technology, for example, here, even for us at Talview, we've been working remotely for close to 8 months now. And the platform which is keeping us all together, the platform which is keeping us all, I would say, as efficient as we could, is the platforms like Microsoft Teams and Slack, because this allows us to collaborate very efficiently. And we saw that that's where the future of work is moving to. And we've started also having a lot of conversations with customers about, okay, we are doing everything from Microsoft Teams. So how do we are also doing our talent discussions on Microsoft Teams. We are interacting with the hiring managers on Teams. We are doing the interviews on Teams. But how do we make this experience more seamless? How can I make my recruiters' life more easier and efficient? And that's really the genesis of our integration with Teams. And today I'm happy to say that we have two specific functionalities, and I'll walk you through those functionalities in the next 5 minutes or so, which we believe can significantly change the way in which recruitment happen. One, in terms of how easy it is to collaborate on top of these platforms, and second, in terms of how how much more technology-driven automation can make the process more efficient. So the first thing, and I'm going to quickly switch my screen. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the scheduling. So interview scheduling is one of the, I would say, uh, most time-consuming aspect. It's very repetitive. And the recruiters keep going back and forth between the candidate, and the hiring manager or the interviewer, and try to reschedule the same interview multiple times. And that with in a Microsoft Teams driven environment can be done in a very different manner. So what you're seeing over here is the Teams calendar. So if you are already using Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Office, you're familiar with this interface. So you have a calendar view. So what you can go here and do is, like you set up any other meeting, you can just go ahead and schedule an interview here. And once you schedule the interview, so this gives you the ability to, I'm just gonna play it a little slower. Sorry for that. So once you decide to schedule an interview, this particular functionality, so this allows you to look at the availability between the different interviewers if you have a panel interview, and the candidate in one single screen. So all the candidate availability which Talview already facilitates. So if you are familiar with Talview, you already know that if when the candidate is doing an assessment or any form of interview before the next round of interview, we have the ability to capture the candidate's availability for a subsequent round of interview within our interface. So that availability now becomes available here for the recruiter to see, along with the calendar availability of the hiring manager or the interviewer who is going to be part of the next round interview.
So Sanjo, I want to jump in on this because when I talk to folks about this who don't have like calendar scheduling automation in some way, I like a piece of my soul dies a little bit because when you are scheduling, right? You guys all know this. This is not a brand new thing. You email a candidate with your hiring manager's availability and they write back and nothing lines up. So you go back to your hiring manager and get more availability and then back to your candidate again. Now you've lost 2 days of time in the process. The other piece, so yeah, fine, you lose the days, your process becomes longer, your metrics look worse. How much time does that take you, right? If you assume, let's say here, it takes you a total of 3 minutes to set up every interview that you do, where you have a hiring manager and a candidate. And if it does only take you 3 minutes, that's freaking awesome. You're doing something great, right? How many interviews do you set up a year? 200, right? So that's 10 hours you're spending setting up interviews. Think about that time suck for just 1 second about what your cost and value is to a company and how much time you're spending doing this. What's being done right now in, I don't know, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. So sorry, I just wanted to jump in because it seems pretty like, oh yeah, okay, great. It's actually much bigger than that.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Mike. So you can schedule the interview, like Mike mentioned, at the click of a button. And then what the platform allows you is to add Talview interviews, which is a new application which you have deployed on Microsoft Teams App Store. So you can just add Talview interviews onto that interview. So you can go ahead, click Talview interviews, add that application onto the interview. And all you need to do now is to, you have the candidate and the role already saved on Talview. So you just need to select those details. and boom, you have all the details about that role now available for your interviewer and for yourself within the same interview tab. So you can see the job description. You can see any details filled by the candidate. If the candidate had uploaded a resume, you will also see the resume over here. You can see the evaluation form which you need to fill, or the interview feedback form which you need to fill as a part of the interview process. You can see who all are part of the panel. So all those details now from within whichever tool you're using, whether you're using an applicant tracking system or you're using Talview standalone, all those details come from Talview and now sits here within Microsoft Teams. So now this entire process happens very seamlessly, and at any given point of time, all the interviewer needs to do is go here and click on the interview and then join from Microsoft Teams itself. So they don't have to now essentially move out of the Teams interface to know about the job description they're going to do the interview for. They don't have to move out for looking at the resume of the candidate. They know in advance what has happened with that candidate in the past, what has been that candidate's journey in the interview process, whom did they meet, or did they take an assessment, they can access the assessment reports, all of that in that one single interface.
So
So
Sanjo, let's talk about that for a second, because that was one of the things that interested me about your product. And guys, if you know me, you know I don't hype specific products, right? I like what I like, and I don't like what I don't like. One of the things that really interested me was the way the interviews actually get conducted, both from a recording perspective, because you guys do record the interviews, and the other is touching a little bit on the use of that all data being captured, right? Because the bottom line is, guys, the days of being able to have your recruiter put the candidate's resume in front of you and the pre-prepared job questions they want you to ask, and then convening in the hall beforehand, meeting with the team before your next team member goes in, making sure you don't ask the same questions, making sure you don't bias the other person, right? That's gone. You can't do that anymore. You can't have an interview here and then a Zoom call over here with other people and then jump over here and the resume up here. I mean, I guess you could. That'd be a nightmare to deal with, right? So I would love, if you could, can you walk us through what interviewing 2.0 looks like when you're talking about the recording itself and why that's actually valuable? And when we talk about all the data being captured, not just from the recording itself, but as you're kind of describing how you have access to the data from all your different platforms at the same time. Can you kind of like show us what that would look like?
Definitely. So let me quickly move here. So this is essentially a candidate profile on Talview for a candidate who has gone through different stages. So in this scenario, you can see the candidate has gone through what is mentioned here as a MCQ. It's basically a written assessment which the candidate has gone through. Then they've gone through an asynchronous video interview on the platform. And in this case, they have already completed the two-way interview, which is a regular interview on the platform. So whenever you go in and you are a recruiter, you are an interviewer, you're going in and seeing a candidate profile, you have access to all these data points here. So you can essentially see all of this in one single platform. You can just go in, see how the candidate performed in each of these different stages in the hiring process. And when you're getting into an interview, you're getting in more prepared with the context of what the candidate has already completed, and you're not going in blind. And now talking about the interview recording itself, and that's another capability which the platform has. So any interview which happens on the platform, that interview is available on the platform for you to review at a later point of time. So you're not many times we see that you have people trying to remember what was discussed during the interview without having a record of that. And then that often leads to unconscious bias. So here, any discussion which you're having about the interview is you can always go back and look at what really happened during the interview, and you can refresh your memory. And that's one value. And the other value is that often you see that you have 8 to 10 candidates at the top of the funnel one of them end up joining, but there are always 3 or 4 candidates who are a good fit who did not end up joining because of budget or location or timing, or maybe one skill set did not match. And 2 months down the lane, you yourself as a recruiter or somebody else from your team is reaching out back to the same candidate for a similar role. You don't want this candidate to come back and do the same assessment, the same interview process all over again. On Talview, you can you can just share this with a new hiring manager as a recruiter, and the new hiring manager can take a look at the interview recordings, the assessment reports, all of that, and then direct say that, hey, this candidate can move directly to a step 5 or step 7 rather than starting from scratch. And that we have seen add significant value for our customers, because it's significantly improving your recruiter efficiency and also significantly improving the candidate experience, because you are showing that you're valuing their time and you're not asking them to repeat steps which you have done already in the past.
Well, Sanjo, to that point, also this idea of what if the hiring manager were to give you, the recruiter, a few questions to ask live, right? So you're recruiting for a tech role and they want to know, hey, explain the difference between a hash set and a tree set, explain the difference between a linked list and an array, right? What if instead of having to figure out, what you're writing down, or saying they chose the right answer, right? What if the hiring manager could give you 5 technical questions to ask, and you ask them, and the hiring manager, instead of having to spend time doing the 30-minute obligatory phone screen, can just move them right to the next round because they physically watched the candidate answering those questions live. Talk about removing that bias, also eliminating necessary interviews that you can do live because all of that data is captured right there. So again, I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's an exciting thing for recruiters to be able to not have to worry about, like, did they say the right thing? I don't really know if they got the answer. Boom, question. Manager can listen to the answer on their own time and then move forward as they'd like. So,
Mike and Sanjo, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's so great to listen to you guys, but I've used the Talview system to hire marketing managers. In fact, I was that great looking bald guy in that screenshot for a minute. I even had more hair than that was like 6 months ago. I'm losing hair. But one of the things I really did was, in the 6 finalists I had, I was able to go back and remember a snippet of the conversation where I wasn't quite sure what the candidate said back to me, and in comparison to what another candidate that was fresher in my mind had just answered the question. And I actually was able to go back and watch that 5-minute answer from the first candidate I interviewed. So I didn't have that effect of liking someone more or less based on when I did the interview with them. And I found that that's just core to Talview. That's not even like a new feature we're talking about today, but that was a really fun, effective tool. So
I didn't actually think about that, Chad, about the idea of, like, as an agency side recruiter, you would strategically put your best candidate as the last candidate to interview, because that, like, if you're interviewing 3 people in a day or 3 people in 2 days, the last candidate's the one. I didn't even think about the fact that, hey, couldn't you then go back and listen to all of the answers side by side to remove that bias? That's smart. That's real smart.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. I'll quickly show another aspect. So some of us, especially, I love chat interfaces. So, and that's also one value which Microsoft Teams add compared to some of the other ways of working. And oftentimes, rather than switching to different tools and then trying to figure out how to navigate within that tool, I love to just chat with the tool, and that's also some functionality which you have added. So as you can see over here on the screen, so here I'm really interacting as a recruiter with the Talview bot on Microsoft Teams, and all I need to do is go in. There are all these commands which are available, so I can just type in help, and it gives me all the commands which I need to use Talview bot within the Microsoft Teams environment. And if I need to schedule an interview, I can just go in, I can see what is my current schedule. I can just type in list. It lists all my current schedules over here. And now if I want to schedule a new interview, I can just go ahead and just give a command on saying schedule. And it allows me, without leaving the Microsoft Teams environment, to set up an interview on Talview or on Teams from the same interface. So that gives me the I would say you don't have to learn a new tool to use it or how to navigate within that experience, and more importantly, you don't have to leave the primary interface which you're using for your day-to-day work to get basics like this done, and that we have seen adding significant value for many of our users.
You know, Sanjo, to that point, and I know for a fact, Lindsay DiCello, you're on here still. I know Ivan was on here. They both work, they have worked for product companies, recruitment product companies. And I think, Lindsay, you could probably speak to this as well, like, or best. One of the biggest issues I've ever seen is adoption, right? Every time you get a new tool, ooh, it's shiny, it's awesome, it's AI, whatever you want to call it. But like, adoption is one of the biggest reasons why tools, quote unquote, don't work. And I share this story every time of had somebody come up to me who will remain nameless a few months ago and say, oh, yeah, we tried Seek Out, didn't work for us. I'm like, I use that platform to recruit for any role you can think of, from sales up to C-level executives on every continent except Africa and Antarctica, and it works for me. So it just didn't work for you. And the bottom line is, we found out from digging that it's because their team would have had to learn a brand new product from scratch, starting all over again. And what you're talking about is interesting and solves, for any managers here, it solves that problem, because you're not learning anything different. You're using the exact same tool that you already use every day. And that is, in my opinion, the number one reason that tools don't work. I'm doing air quotes if you can't see me.
Great. And we'll just talk about, so, and I think, Mike, one of the other things which we had over the slide and which you touched upon was the aspect of 360-degree feedback. How often, so interviewing is almost 90% of talent decisions are made based on interviews, but most organizations either do not have the ability to, or the bandwidth to provide interviewer training, or it's often ignored because people think it's okay, interviewers are should be figuring out how to do interviews on their own. So, and that we see is a significant I would say disservice to candidates, because if you're making these most important decisions on the basis of interviews, then there should be feedback given to interviewers. Somebody should be analyzing their performance. Somebody should be analyzing how giving them feedback on their interview technique. They should look at how successful these interviewers are on their predictions of a candidate's future performance. And that, we believe, is a significant opportunity which digitization is also bringing on.
So Sanjo, or Chad, actually, you as well, man. You guys have hired a bunch of people, right? Let's say more than 5 people in your career, right? How'd you guys learn how to interview? They don't. There's no interviewing 101 in college. So like, how did you guys actually learn how to do that? How were you given feedback?
I think in my case, I remember in my first job, after I spent a few years, one fine day somebody asked me to do an interview, and I probably at that point Googled like how to do an interview, and that's how it got started. And I don't remember till probably we started instituting some sort of interview training in Talview a few years back, where I also started looking at, okay, how am I interviewing? What's my interviewing technique? There was no formal feedback at any given stage on how I'm doing as an interviewer.
Yeah, and so to think as a recruiter, right? We're doing X number of interviews per week, right? How many years has it been that you've been doing that? Do you remember your first 3 to 6 months interviewing candidates where you look back and you're like, oh my God, I asked a software engineer if he works with C-Pound. Oh man, that sucks, right? Think about how awkward that felt, and how like you didn't really know how to guide the conversation, or am I talking too much, or am I talking too little? And realize that your hiring managers will always be like that until they reach a certain level, right? Because they're doing, I don't know, 50 interviews a year, 100 interviews a year. You're doing what, 40 a month, right? So think about that, right, Sandro? Like it took you having to, which I love. This is totally my nerd sourcing answers. Like I just Googled it. Like, how do I do that thing? But like actually learning those skills is a task, right? So for all the folks on here, I'd love in the chat, like how did you guys learn how to interview? Right. I'll tell you, for me, I worked in one of the puppy mills and I had to follow my manager. So they'd pick up the phone. We'd both be on the phone. Right. This is back in the days when you could do that because there are landlines. For any of you Gen Zers, that's a phone that's plugged into the wall. And I had my manager like kind of whispering to me what I should say back to the person. Right. So she'd be like, and what's the total comp? Right. And I'm like, and what's the total comp? And they're like, I can hear her. I'm like, you know, how did you guys learn how to interview? Put in the chat. Like, I'm interested to hear. And chat, any insight?
Hey, Mike, I mean, I would say I've learned by being interviewed. Obviously, I do more executive level interviews in the last 10 years than prior, but I've had some doozies that didn't go too well. And I've really tried to learn by their bad experience, honestly, of how I want to conduct an interview. And the halo effect is real. I mean, the biggest thing I've tried to figure out is giving people this, similar questions and really taking what they say, not so much how they say it. You can get to know their personality later, but I just want to know the substance of how their mind works in answering those similar questions, but yeah, whole other webinar about some fun interviews I've been on myself.
Can't wait for that webinar.
Yeah, but I'm happy at Talview, so no more interviews for a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's the next functionality which I wanted to briefly touch upon. So this is something which we have currently in beta. We are and this is something which we want to launch in near future. And the reason I'm including that in this particular webinar, because this will not only be available for interviews which are happening on Talview, but it will also be available for any interviews which are happening on top of Teams. So our Teams integration or Microsoft Teams integration is going to support this particular functionality as well, where we will have the ability to slice and dice every interview and and give insights to the interviewer. So it works like a 360-degree feedback for the interviewer on right from how much inactivity is there in the interview to the talk ratio, who is talking more, who is talking less, are you talking too much, are you giving the candidate an opportunity to talk, have you spoken about or have you touched upon the most relevant aspects of the job description. So what are the keywords which are surfacing from the discussion which you're having, and what is the relevance of that to the job profile, what's the relevance of that to the resume or the CV of the candidate. So all of those insights by virtue of the interview getting digitized, and as we see more and more interviews getting digitized today, it offers significant amount of value for our customers, and that's something which we are very excited about.
And I think that version 2.0, right, of interviewing, it really does come back to that emotional intelligence, right? And yes, it's a buzzword just like AI, but the bottom line is emotional intelligence has been proven to be a leading driver of the success of not just individuals, but also companies. And you are not born stuck in what your EQ is. Your IQ will typically only change X amount over the course of your life. EQ can be learned. But how can you do it without telling somebody, like, be more empathetic? Like, yeah, duh, right? What does that look like? Do you have any action items that I can take? Anything that you've heard? Well, yeah, we do. We have the recorded interviews. We'd love to be able to go back with you and talk you through how you can improve on that, because again, it's scientifically proven that it is more important than IQ for individual success.
Yeah. And I was actually speaking to a recruitment leader in a large organization, and one of her biggest worries was they are such a large organization, and interviewers come in all kind of flavors. So they're worried about the legal exposure of the interviewer asking something in the interview which they're not supposed to ask, like somebody's family plans. And this kind of once we have a platform like this, it allows us to give them proactive or make proactive interventions so that they can ensure that they are projecting, every interviewer is projecting the kind of company culture and brand experience which they as a company and brand wants to project to the candidates.
Oh my gosh. Yes, the legal compliance thing in and of itself is worth this. I was doing a training a little while ago for a company, a longer while ago, and sitting in helping them with qualification calls to go through, and heard somebody ask, like, are you a US citizen? And I was like, oh, you can't ask that. And they're like, what do you mean? I've been doing it for like a year and a half. And I'm like, oh, you can't do that. Right. But how do you know? How do you know where that line is unless someone physically sat in on your calls to listen? And nobody's doing that over a long haul. So stuff like this can be like compliance important, legal important.
Yep. And the last point on this slide, and going back to the organization. So, and Mike, you did touch upon this multiple times during the presentation, the amount of time recruiter is putting in terms of just transferring data from one platform to another. You're making your notes on a paper or an or a Google spreadsheet or a Microsoft Word document, and then you're going back and updating that in your applicant tracking system. You're using a different assessment tool. Now you need to download the reports from that assessment tool and then upload it back to the applicant tracking system. That's a nightmare. And now with Microsoft Teams or Zoom also coming into the mix, and you're using that to do many of these things, it becomes significant amount of additional work for the recruiter. So the next capability which we have on the Teams integration is catering to that specific requirement. So you can see, so you can do the interview on Teams. When you're doing the interview on Teams here, as a hiring manager, you or the interviewer or as a recruiter, you have the ability to fill in all of this interview feedback right in the interview window. And with the beauty of it is anything which you put down here is going to seamlessly go back and sit in your Talview login or in your applicant tracking system through our integration with the applicant tracking system. So all of this data which you're putting in while you're doing the interview, it'll automatically go and sit there. So you don't have to keep transferring data from one place to another. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. I absolutely love that idea of the organizational pieces of how much of your crap gets lost within the black hole of data transfer from system to system. And if you're saying, oh, we don't have any of that, yes, you do. Yes, you do. I'm telling you, yes, you do. I work in a really automated environment, and I do. And if you really don't, please tell us what you're doing. Let's do a webinar on that with Talview. Sanjo, can I share my screen again? Because
hey, Mike, just a time check. You guys have 10 minutes. And did you answer Daniel Lockhart's question about where do you put role-specific questions in the core values list?
Daniel, hello. So when we were talking about core values, right? So where are we? Right here. If I have specific questions, I just put them off at the bottom of the core values and try to remember to write them in the same order and have them, to sound silly, start with the same letter every single time, which is a little bit of a bear. But if you're keeping the order the same and you're writing them out the same, typically I put them at the end. I don't know if that helps answer your question or not. If not, just ping me. I'll try again. So guys, one of the things that we run into in version 2.0, and this isn't just a Talview thing. This isn't just even an interviewing thing. This is a hiring in the current technological state is like, how do we actually balance? Right? How do we balance ourselves? How do we balance the use of technology? How do we balance our time? So the first thing I always ask is, does this meeting need to happen? Here's the thing. Interviewing version 1.0, when you're talking about feedback and talking about how people thought the interviews went and what questions, it's always another meeting, right? I remember I was helping a client hire a sourcer, and like, do an interview, everybody does their interview. Then everybody jumps on a call and goes over the feedback on the candidate so it's fresh. And then we do all the interviews, and then we jump on another call and we go over the feedback for all the candidates and go through it. And then we also have a document where we're sharing our thoughts on what we thought from the interview that we have to load into a separate ATS system. So like, does this meeting need to happen? And that doesn't just mean like, hey, could this have just, been like an email, but also, is there a way to automate a process so you don't have to do that meeting? And so how can we limit the number of video meetings to automate what's happening in your video meetings, right? Do you have a tool like, and it doesn't have to be Talview, sorry guys, but do you have a tool where you are recording your video interviews and can, from the video interview, from that platform right there, put your notes in so it's saved against a system, right? If it is, that's going to limit the number of video meetings you need to have afterwards. And it's going to limit the number of video meetings that your candidates need to have with you. Because remember, they're tired too, right? They're talking on Zoom all the time, or video chat, wherever, all the time, interviewing. It gets exhausting. So how can you eliminate or lower the number of meetings? And the answer, again, is going to be automation technology. And then this is just a fun fact for everybody. If you are getting burnt out from Zoom meetings, which if you're not, that is awesome. If you are, hide your face on the screen. Zoom has a functionality to do this. It is apparently psychologically exhausting to watch yourself, which I guess makes sense because I've never seen anybody who in front of their desk has a mirror and they stare at themselves all day. But yeah, fun little fact for you. Some
salespeople do, Mike. Good salespeople.
Oh my gosh, there's so much psychologically I want to bring up with those people. That's amazing. So guys, the last bit that I wanted to leave everybody with was kind of these new cultural norms that exist, right? And whether you're going to start interviewing in what we're calling version 2.0 or not, these are the case now. So you can fight it and you can still use your fax machines to send over your candidate's resume, which is fine. It's not, by the way. Or you can accept that this is the way that things are now, right? And number one, there's a mix of work and personal lives. What do I mean when I say that? So right now, and this sounds like totally creepy, but like, I know the color of the room that Chad works in. I also know that he doesn't live in a city because I see the trees outside. Right? I know he doesn't have a headrest on his chair, which God bless you, man. That's awesome, right? Sanjo, I know the artwork that you have. I know the color of your room, right? I can guess like the dimensions. So you're mixing whether you want to or not. And if you have kids, right, Sanjo, you have 2 girls. I can't imagine that in the course of 2020, they haven't at some point interrupted a video call you've been on or jetted across or made a noise or something like that. So these things that didn't exist prior, that whole like leave your work at home and or leave your personal life at home and your work life at work, that doesn't exist anymore, right? To what degree, give or take, but like that's leaving now. So if you haven't found a way to adopt to that, just understand it's going to be out of the norm for people. I compare this to people who like have a work Facebook account. Just use your Facebook account. Nobody cares that you went to that concert and got drunk and took a selfie with your tongue out. It's fine. We've all been there, right? Most of us. Next is adopting and adapting to technology. This has been happening over the last probably like 5 to 7 years at a hockey stick level of adoption and advancement. However, now it's not an option. I can't count the number of folks I've spoken to, owners of businesses, who are like, this Zoom thing's pretty cool. Like, yeah. Like, yeah, it is. And like, I guess we don't really have to be in the office all the time. Like, no, you don't, right? I have a men's group with my church and like some of the folks are more seasoned, right? I have 80-year-olds using Zoom to connect. So like, you're going to have to adopt new technologies and you're going to have to adapt to how they work. If you don't, you will get lost. And how do you do that? You find the ways that you are either wasting time or duplicating effort, and then find a technology to replace that or to fix that problem. And the third is realness. And I can't stress this enough when it comes to interviewing. the more things you can automate, right? And I do love this about Talview. The more things you can automate, the less you have to think about the BS behind the interview. The more I can just talk to you and learn about you. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Hey, it looks like a Tommy Hilfiger tie. That's so cool. I have one of those too, right? And you're able to have real conversations with people because you're not worried about like, oh, resume. Oh, I got to make sure I read that. Oh, what questions did I have to ask again? Oh, I got to make sure I write that answer down, right? The more you can do that, this is one of those examples where the more technology that you can use intelligently, right? The more human you can be and the more real that you can be. So with that, we've got a few minutes left. What questions do you guys have? Anything. We'll show you, we'll answer, you name it.
And just chat or Q&A the question.
Yeah, if you just asked it out loud, please understand I can't hear you.
Yeah.
And also that's really weird that you did that. I still love you. It's just that's weird. Anything. You've got me for 3 minutes. You got Sanjo, literally owns a global tech company. Pretty good time to ask some questions. They
Does
don't have to be
anyone want a job with
related.
Talview to be a recruiter?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I mean, guys, this is a lot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
there's
right.
one question.
Oh, there. I missed the first few minutes, so not sure if covered. Does this integrate with ATS or work as a standalone system? Oh, I actually know this one. I know this one. Viba, yes, it does, and that's the one of the beauties of a system like this. And I think it's what a lot of ATSs are trying to do with like the open APIs and using Zapier that you can connect to this, and with the Zap you can do this, and you have like these bajillion Zaps that hopefully don't break down. Talview, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, it's your product, but like I'm rolling with it, sits on top of these systems and basically enables you to use them seamlessly with one another. And it makes it so you're not, I basically think of it as like a single sign-on with a bunch of tech attached to it. So you're not going into your ATS, you're not downloading this document, you're not having to go into Zoom, it's just here. Did I miss anything? Is that off?
No, you are right on target. Anything which you put on Talview will automatically go back to your applicant rank system. So we have seamless integration with whether it's Taleo, Greenhouse, Success Factors, you name it, iSIMS. So we have those integrations already in place, and that's a big part of our philosophy itself. We believe in delivering seamless user experience for all of our users, and that's also why Microsoft Teams is such a big part of our product strategy now, and we are extending this similar capability to Zoom as well. So that's part of our roadmap. Yeah.
Very awesome. This is being recorded, right, Chad?
It is. And so if you missed any part of this or just were laughing at any part of Mike's presentation, and maybe his beard looks great. You wouldn't laugh at it.
Thank you.
I can't help but notice
this is
you grew
2020.
that fast.
This is 2020, man, right here.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, that's like 2 months of growth, right?
Yes, it is.
But we will send out probably the recording by Monday.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah, and I think there's one more question on the type of skill assessments. We support a wide range of skill assessments. So unlike some of the other assessment platforms out there, we have a very open philosophy about the kind of assessments which the customers want to use. So you can bring in any third-party assessment, and we have a plug and play integration available on Talview. So it's probably the easiest way of creating a workflow consisting of an interview and assessment, which we provide. So you can just bring that on, integrate that to Talview, or you can use something which is already available on Talview, or you can create on your own. So all three options are available on Talview.
Nice.
Well, we are finished if that's all the questions that we've received.
I think so. Anything else?
Looks like a lot of good community happening in the chat. It's fun to see people talking and interacting. That's great. Anything else, guys?
Oh my God.
Anyone can go to talview.com, obviously, and check this out. We have an entire Insta hiring suite. We're the fastest way to hire your best candidates, hire at the speed of your best candidates, and that is Talview. So we're very happy that everyone joined.
Yes, and thank you for hosting. This was fun, and I can't wait to post this around for people. Yasna, if you read science fiction at all or fantasy, one of my favorite series is the Stormlight Archive, and one of the main characters' names is Yasna, and you're the first Yasna I've ever met, and so I love you. We need to connect in real life so I can say that I actually know a real Yasna. So sorry for the side note, everybody, but that's very cool. Sorry, I nerded out a little bit there. So guys, thank you again. I can't wait to be able to share this out with folks and kind of spread the good word on interviewing 2.0.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.